Let's begin. So, welcome everybody who's got on the webinar so far. I'm Dr. Adam Breiner, and I want to welcome you to this very special webinar. We titled it From Rainforest to Recovery, Kambo's Peptide Power Explained. And just to give you a little background, I learned about this therapy only this past year, but I quickly began exploring how it could be used to help detoxify people. And we're in an increasingly toxic world, and a lot of people from suffering from chronic illnesses. So that's how I met our special guest, Neal Henegar, who's one of the most knowledgeable and sought after facilitators and experts in Kambo medicine. He's the founder of Kambo Frog Detox, the Medicine Frog Foundation, and Soma Church. And tonight we're going to go over what this medicine is, how it's used, how it works, what's it been used for, and we're going to discuss some cases so you can get a sense how powerful this really is. And we may even be getting into some discussions about other plant medicines that are from the Amazon that are used in combination with Kambo, and hopefully at the end we'll take some questions. So welcome, Neal, or some people call you Neal. So why don't you tell us a little about yourself, how you came upon Kambo, and of course, what it actually is, because people are wondering.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Adam. Yeah, Kambo is a peptide therapy that originates from the Amazon jungle. And it's a very strong detox medicine and is a really, really powerful peptide and one of the few indigenous peptides that we know of. I was first introduced to Kambo in 2012 by the Yawanawa Indians, and this spurred a whole deep research of the medicine. I'd never interacted or experienced a medicine like this, and I had been studying indigenous medicine for some 20 years. Prior to that, in my background as a Cherokee Indian is deep in indigenous medicine. But the peptides that came from the Kambo were like nothing I'd ever experienced, and I went through a radical transformation in a short period of time. And so that was really interesting to me. And so I found myself on a journey to go down to Peru and Iquitos, deep into the Amazon, to study with the Amazonian tribes that worked with this medicine, the Katuquina, the Kutanawa, the Yawanawa, who I started my journey with in Orlando, Florida, and then the Matses, most notably known to be the lineage holders of how we got this medicine in the West.
So it originates, though, down in Peru with those tribes, right?
Correct. The original story of the medicine is kind of a folklore or a myth, but we believe that there's some truth to it because across the tribes, the story is the same, which kind of goes like this. There was an epidemic in the lower Amazonian region, and the medicine men, the curanderos, were trying every medicine, and people were dying in the hundreds. And a curandero, a plant medicine shaman, went into the jungle and took a plant medicine that some of you might have heard of called ayahuasca, which is a visionary medicine.
Right.
And in the vision, the spirit of ayahuasca showed Kampu this frog and how to apply the frog. So through that vision, the medicine was acquired, and then the specific frog and how to apply it, and then this healed the people. So this is pretty much the story as we know it. The medicine was first brought to the United States in 1983 by a reporter by the name of Peter Gorman. And Peter Gorman was a journalist, and there was a lot of activity in the late 70s, early 80s about Amazonian medicines. Terence McKenna, quite a few people were deep into the study of plant medicines, and some of these uh, cultural and anthropological, um, treasure troves of pharmacopoeia and plant medicines. So Peter Gorman brought the first specimens from the Matses, from actually Iquitos, where we have the foundation set up, um, and got those specimens to an Italian neuroscientist by the name of Vittore Esperalmer,
Hmm.
who is most notably known for discovering uh, the serotonin pathways. So he was a Nobel uh, Peace Prize winner and uh, a neuroscience doctor. So he went and studied the first specimens at the Department of Herpetology in the Smithsonian Institute. And his findings were that this medicine was, to quote him, he said, "This is a fantastic chemical cocktail with medical applications unequaled by any amphibian."
Wow. So that's a pretty bold statement. Now, I think there's more than just one peptide, right? I mean, this is like there's a class of peptides in here. Like, what have they found so far?
Well, there's over 120 bioavailable peptides, and what makes this medicine so unique is that um, the variable group of peptides cross the blood-brain barrier, which is a big deal regarding peptides. So it actually there's deltorphine, delmorphine. These are on the morphine receptors for pain management. There's dermaceptin B2, which in French studies restricts tumor microcirculation and vascular circulation, which are these small little um, vascular uh, roots, if you will, to tumors and cancers. And in French studies, it's shown to eliminate certain cancers by restricting the microvascular system for those growths. There is phylomedicin, which is increases tachycardia, which is heartbeat, drops blood pressure down, increases vasodilation. Um, those are some of the top ones. There's several that we know of, and there's several that are unidentified.
Hmm.
Uh, and there's a lot of this is a very new medicine in the United States.
All right.
Uh, with just less than 50 years and very little medical research from allopathic medicine. So what's interesting about Kambo is that it is working across, and this is some of the work that um, we talk about with Dr. Tony and Chinese medicine. This medicine works very uniquely in the fact that it works on all of the organ channels and works on not only the digestive, but the cardiovascular and the immune, the lymphatic.
Mhm.
So it's a kind of across the board medicine that focuses on regulating circadian rhythm and detoxifying the entire system and bringing the body into a homeostasis or a deep reset, which is very signature to this medicine.
So, you mentioned about the meridians. So everybody, I decided I have to try this first before I talked about it. And I tried it. Actually, I tried it with your student and colleague Tony, and I'll tell more about what I felt. But um, one of the things I noticed, like right afterwards, was I could feel like all my meridians. It was pretty wild. All my acupuncture meridians. I was like, oh, that's my gallbladder. That's my liver. It's large. I was like, I could feel the meridians, just everything just moving. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, that there's an interesting um, energy to Kambo because Kambo, a lot of people try to classify Kambo as a frog poison, but the frog doesn't have any natural enemies. And what's interesting is that it creates a hormesis in the animal that interacts with the frog, which actually betters the animal. But the process is a very memorable one, uh, and so because the fastest way for detoxification and elimination is usually, excuse me, purging, sweating, and then the bowels the other direction. Most of the time, the animals are better for the experience with Kambo, but they never forget it and they never mess with the frog again. So it's interesting because it doesn't function really from a physiological aspect as a poison. There's not damage done to the body, but because it creates a hormetic response in the body, like we use this medicine on animals. The Matses do with dogs and cats, and to make them strong, to increase their performance in hunting and such. So it is an energetic opening
Right.
that creates an experience of awareness of the system, as you describe the meridians and opening. And these peptides, and the way that nature has arranged them, work on every single organ channel in the body.
Yeah,
So
I mean, pretty.
yeah,
I mean, you were mentioning about a couple of peptides and specific actions that they have, but that's if they're singular peptides and their study is singular. This is when everything is together, and the combination that's probably not well known is exactly what they all do when they start playing together, right?
yeah, correct. Just like Vitoras Brahmer said, this is like a fantastic chemical cocktail, which we're just now beginning to understand the powerful influence of peptides.
Mhm.
And peptides are these long chain amino acids that create a DNA response, a physiological, chemical response in the body on a cellular level. And as far as my study goes, because I've served this medicine something like 7,000 times, um, it's the first initiating sequence with that chemical communication is that it initiates a detoxification of the organs and the letting go of metabolic waste, which then creates a reset in that organ channel, and the organ comes back into kind of a balance or homeostasis. We know this a little bit with like rife, right? We talk about frequency,
Right.
how liver has a particular frequency, and if you resonate that frequency, it
Mhm.
can come back into homeostasis. So very similarly, these long chain amino acids create a response, which creates a reset in the body.
So, to let everyone know exactly how is this medicine, you know, gotten from the frog? How is it applied in practicality? I guess everyone probably wants to know. Is that the frog behind you?
Yeah, this is one of the pieces of the Shipibo that make art around uh, the Kambo and such. Yeah, so the medicine is comes from the secretion, uh, and that's from the skin, not the excretion. So that's the difference. Um, so the secretion comes from the skin of the Phylomedusa bicolor, which is Kambo frog. And the frog is it's a very difficult medicine to procure on the right time, not too rainy, not too full moon, around a lagoon. Um, at night, we go into the forest and then we start calling like a male frog, and then we get a response from female frogs and other male frogs. And then these frogs willingly, in my case, when I was down there hunting the frog jumped from 30 feet literally into my hand. It was like amazing. I'll have to show you the videos. And I was like, wow, here's this amazing frog. The frog climbs on a branch, and we take the branch back. Sometimes it can be a couple hours, and the frog stays on the branch. And then in the morning, the frog is essentially, his hands and feet are tied, and that struggling of that, the frog releases the secretion,
Hmm.
and the frog's taken down, and then we bring him back to the place where he came from. But that secretion is dried on a stick, and that stick is then hydrated with water or saliva,
Hmm.
and then a small, what's called a gate, which is a, a small vine called the Tamishan, is used to just take the top layer of skin. It's like a little, like a ballpoint,
Like
something like
a
that.
mock Sebastian, like the we use in Chinese medicine, right? Just to,
Exactly.
but so that opens up an area where the Kambo medicine can be applied. Then.
Correct. And it's necessary to access the lymphatic system.
Mhm.
And then the secretion is reconstituted and then put onto that point. And within seconds, you can feel a rush of energy like a niacin, and a
Yeah.
lot of digestive juices, meridians, things start activating. It's quite it's quite an interesting experience. And then we leave the medicine on for 20 minutes. Usually within that period of time, the person can purge. And this is a different kind of purge. It's a deep um, detox purge. There can be yellow, green, orange, brown, black, indicative of the organ channel that we're getting the response from.
Mhm.
And we'll leave that medicine on for roughly about 20 minutes. And then afterwards, the body starts recovering. And um, within another 10 or 15 minutes, the person's, um, fully back from the journey. And most people are feeling energetically lighter, uh,
Mhm.
energized, um, feeling stronger, just feeling better. It's tough to describe what people experience because everyone experiences something different, but the overall effect is, the report is kind of like a lifting of the spirit. We have this in the indigenous language. We have this word called panema, and panema is like the heavy or dense, or it translates to the bad luck energy. So this bad luck energy can be like not being able to sleep, too much mental activity, feeling exhausted, health issues, reproductive issues,
Mhm.
um, yeah, just a general heaviness in the person's spirit, mind, and body.
Mhm.
Um, and overall, that is the report. People really experience a lightening and a transformation. I believe it's due to the detoxification because these solvents and free roaming rats getting from foods and industrial medicines uh, are kind of a foreign substance, and they build as metabolic waste in the
Right.
body, and that creates a general
Yeah.
uh,
People are very
emotional
very
and
toxic. So the
uh,
emotional release connected.
physiological response of heaviness.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, of course, right. In kind of like more of an Eastern philosophy, um, we talk about a belief system is the strongest material in the universe, and a lot of times the mind or a belief can create a physiological response, can create an emotional response. Um, to be in the body, we have to have the mind, which also has to have the feelings and the emotions. So these three tend to be usually intertwined with with regards to our strength and also our imbalances.
Got it. So, what when someone's like doing this, so like what patients, what kind of patients have sort of come to use Cambo, and what are what are they? Know you're saying the individual experiences, but like, I mean, one of the things that I think a lot of people here, especially in North America, is we got so many toxins, people got so many health challenges, everything from, in the north, well, it's pretty much all across the US, but especially in our area, like Lyme disease and tick-borne infections, mold toxicities, um, uh, long COVID, and, now spike protein um, from the vaccines. We got a whole host of problems, right? Health problems, just from not just being in this sort of toxic environment, and it takes time to detox people. So, what have you seen? What kind of cases, and how quickly are people sort of responding? What kinds of cases respond? Which cases don't?
Yeah, I see there's Kambo is really effective at autoimmune diseases, AIDS, Hashimoto's, Lyme's disease, Epstein-Barr. Um, there is a great amount of application um, for this, and a lot of those um, autoimmune diseases start with the compromisation of the gut biome,
Mhm.
which we know with the glyphosate, people like Dr. Zach Bush talking about the importance of the microflora and the biome, and what happens with the glyphosates, which are affecting the soil and the communication on an intercellular level
Right.
between plants, is also affecting our guts and a neurological intercellular communication in the greater body, which then creates cancer and creates a lot of shutdown between systems. But in general, most people suffer from systemic toxemia. We don't have a culture in the United States that does frequent detoxes, that does gallbladder detoxes or liver detoxes. We're pretty much eating um, 3 meals a day as conditioned by American standards. A lot of those are high in sugar, high in yeast. So candida is a huge precursor for cancers. And this medicine is by far the most effective candida medicine I've ever seen.
Hmm.
We're getting um, with colonics and 3 combo sessions. We are getting the results in a week that takes 6 months to reset. So it has a radical effect on the overall bacteria count, the negative bacteria, if you will, the yeast overgrowth, the alkalinity, um, and the pH, which is the alkalinity and the acidity
Yeah.
in the body, and which also has to do a lot with the toxic load
Right.
on the physical body. So we've done radical work with cancers, cancers that can't be accessed, like brain tumors, things like that. This is where the peptide dermaceptine B2 is really, really amazing. I've taken people that had stage 4 liver cancer with pre and post biopsies and blood work from Moffitt Cancer Research Institute, and in 3 days, there's no cancer.
Wow.
Um, Very radical results.
Yeah.
Of course, as well, the sessions can be uncomfortable for 20 minutes, right? 20, 30 minutes. Um, but the results are pretty radical. Um, and looking under microscope with microscopy, live blood analysis, we see a radical reshuffling of how the white blood cells and the red blood cells function, the plasma, the parasites, and um, the uric acid, especially, which creates gout, and a lot of it's also a free roaming radical, can create
Right.
some cellular damage. Just the blood is night to day
It
after
just
20 minutes.
cleans up. It cleans up and very quickly. So that's
Very
so.
quickly.
And by the way, that means that people are going to be carrying, a lot of blood with the Roulet formation. You're therefore not carrying enough oxygen. So now the person's oxygenating better. Their
Yeah,
lung.
the blood, regardless of what system of medicine we look at, blood is the life force. It delivers the nutrients, the oxygen, the water, and the hydration, and picks up the metabolic waste from the cells, and then helps to facilitate clearing that out of the body. So most people have a lot of dirty or sick blood, and this medicine immediately addressed that. One of the interesting things about Kambo is the peptide phylomedusin, and if you look at the frog, it's called Phylomedusa bicolor. Phylomedusin, within 4 or 5 seconds, you can feel the body open
Hmm.
and the blood rush to the brain, to the body, through vasodilation.
Right.
So several of these peptides open up the floodgates for blood and nourishing interstitial tissue, which is really important in gathering of the metabolic waste and resetting, detoxifying the body.
Right. So I think one of the things you also make sure someone's really drinking a lot beforehand so that they can sort of purge out. Right.
Yeah, hydration is a big part of this. We've worked a lot with a lot of digestive issues, Crohn's. Um, uh, it works a lot with reproduction.
Hmm.
Women that have had problems being fertile or having reproductive issues, endometriosis. Um,
So like has gone under like IVF, let's say,
yeah,
unsuccessfully. They're very toxic from that, right?
correct.
By just really overdriving the hormone system, and it doesn't always work. Have you seen anything where they, let's say, done some Cambo and then all of a sudden the things normalize and they become fertile?
Yeah, actually, it's usually within 3 sessions, and I've worked with acupuncturists. Kambo is a very powerful reset, which is really important. Um, if the if the nervous system isn't in a downregulated state, it doesn't feel safe, then it's difficult to become pregnant.
Right.
Um, so there's a lot of reset that happens with Kambo. That's one of the things that the Matses use the medicine for. The Matses also start with their children at 6 months
Wow.
onward. So they're very early. They call this medicine the vaccine of the forest. Some of the Matses live several weeks by boat to what would be an emergency facility. So to the Matses, Kambo is the main pharmacopoeia, their main medicine that they work with, and they start vaccinating the children at 6 months on because um, there is mosquitoes and things that can carry dengue and yellow fever and
Yeah.
malaria. Um, children can die if they're bit, in at this time. So they really they use the medicine to strengthen the immune system for the children, so they're more resilient. But yeah, we see a lot of different cancers, see a lot of people with addiction. This is really, really a powerful medicine with regards to addiction. Uh, in Sometimes SSRIs are just as bad and as addictive as the medicines that they are prescribed to get them, off of.
Hmm.
So it's interesting because Kambo works on a neurological level by creating neuroplasticity and
Right.
new neural pathways. So sometimes with addiction, alcoholism, smoking, or harder drugs, there can be a change in the person's belief patterns, but there's still this neurological pathway that's etched into the nervous system. So this neuroplasticity in amongst the addiction community, Kambo is favored to create a total neurological reset.
Hmm.
So this is very interesting.
So like
Very,
where people are using well, everything from I guess for addictions as well, they're using like psilocybin,
yeah,
ayahuasca, um, some other things.
iboga, yeah,
Yeah.
iboga is another one that they're using. Rapé is something that they use for smoke cessation.
Mhm.
Uh, and these are all kind of in a family of Amazonian medicines. A
Mhm.
lot of people will use Kambo to detox their body in preparation for an ayahuasca ceremony, which is a visionary medicine that's kind of like the we call that medicine grandmother medicine. It's like, in the Matrix movie when there's the old lady who's baking cookies for Neo. It's like grandmother is kind of like the oracle of plant medicine.
Mm.
Rapé is a medicine that we use. It's an indigenous snuff that is tobacco based, but also has other plant medicines. That medicine in particular was really important during COVID.
Mm.
Another French study where they showed the nicotine from Mapacho rustica, which is a particular strain of tobacco,
Right.
um, blocking the COVID and the virus. So
Yeah, I
very, very amazing
very powerful.
response with.
Oh, we lost you there for a second. I think you get a little. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So
one of us has a connection issue. So that yes, the nicotine and how that blocks the spike protein. So I guess when we're talking that plant medicine specifically, ape arape and could be used to help people with like long COVID or acute COVID, but then combine that with combo. I'm sure you've seen some pretty good results with some of these people, huh?
yeah, absolutely. You know, repe or hepe depends if you're talking about Brazil or Peru. Um, this medicine's been around for several thousand years. In fact, Napoleon was a big fan of Europe. There was a big craze on it. But if we look at the medicine itself, it is, the first line of defense for pathogens is the nose, right? The mouth, which is why we have, um, we get runny noses and we have uh, mucogen and snot that comes out. So this is the first place where this external environment, which is actually internal, can be accessed by the external world. So when there is in the Chinese medical appropriation of when there is cold and damp,
Mhm.
we start to see pathogens, parasites, bacteria, these types of things gathering in those areas. So rapé, which there's hundreds of types of rapé,
Yeah.
um, based on the application, the plant, what its target is. This creates a dryness and a heat, which kind of handles the wetness and the cold in
Mm.
these areas, and it eliminates a lot of pathogens and bacteria. It's
Mhm.
also really good for digestion. It's really good for parasites. So we have this kind of classification of medicine from the Amazonian um, medical approach as they're called the dietas, and the dieta is diet in Spanish. And what we do is we work with that one medicine and we create a relationship with that medicine and allow that medicine to work through and atone the things that that medicine does
Mm.
in the body. And Rapé is a really good example of that medicine. No one has ever had any adverse effects. There's no nose cancer. There's no anything that comes as a negative result of the use of the medicine, and the positive results are innumerable.
Yeah, it's a pretty yeah. Use it and bring some hopefully to clinic too for patients because it's powerful. It's great
Yeah,
stuff. I know we're getting some questions here. I'm gonna read some of them, but let's see. With cancer, you do this process more than one time. So I guess um That's a good question. Like, how often does someone do Kambo, not Robbie, Kambo? Like,
Yeah, Kambo.
is it once a week? Is it once a month? Once a year? Like, what is it, and how often does one need to do it?
So with regards to cancer specifically, what we do is we do what we call lunar vaccination. There's, teach this medicine and do certification programs. And one of the things that the Matses work with as far as an indigenous protocol is 3 sessions within a Maguante or a moon cycle. So within 28 days, from a Eastern Indian approach, we have this thing called the Inga and the Pingala, which is the rise and the fall of blood and lymph in the body in relationship to the moon. So somehow the moon affects the tidal aspects, and because we're over 80% water, it also affects our immune system and our lymphatic system. So typically what we do with a cancer patient is we'll do some preliminary blood work if that's available, but we do 3 sessions within 28 days, and then we go ahead and look again at the white blood cells and the other stats regarding that. This medicine is
Sorry, just to interrupt you. Does it have to be done like day one, day 14, day 20, or can it be done like 3 days in a row kind of thing if people.
Yeah, it's pretty flexible. It can be done 3 days in a row. We've done that. Kambo can be done multiple times in a day.
Hmm.
It's not uh, it's not the most pleasant experience for about 15 or 20 minutes.
Right.
You can imagine. Um, I say to my clients, I say, okay, so before you can let go of the toxins in your body, you're also going to experience the emotions that were associated with them before just one more time before you let go of those. And so, the response is usually like of vasodilation, heat, energy, uh, heartbeat increases. We can start sweating, and within minutes, we can be purging this like foul energy out of the body, which literally smells and is disgusting. But as soon as you do that, you're feeling more clear,
Yeah.
and it becomes very obvious to you that it's better that this toxicity is out of the body than carrying it around with us. And 20 minutes goes pretty quickly,
Yeah.
but essentially the process goes: the body opens, the organ channels are accessed and respond, they drop toxicity, it goes through the central channel, which is the stomach meridian. We drink water to hydrate and to give it a medium for the toxins to come out with, and the
So,
person purges, and then the medicine comes off, and they kind of like cool down and relax, take a nap if they want to, or just rest. And then the results over the next 28 days for most people are radical. I mean, their sleep is better, their diets, these medicines have a certain wisdom to them. It's like, if anybody's listening that has done maybe ayahuasca or something, it's difficult to describe. They fall in a category of an adaptogen, which means that it's an inherently intelligent medicine that essentially goes where the particular physiology is needing that medicine to go. And so in that way, it uniquely affects each individual on a kind of a customized level. And one of the universal things that most people report is better sleep, more energy, more performance, depression lifted, no more cravings. And in the case of chronic disease like Lyme or HIV, that the immune system experiences a palpable difference in the energy level and day to day of
so the
what that
body's able to
individual
start
has.
fighting off the infections and
Correct.
resolving that. I see. someone asked, how would you know if you need more than one session of combo, or is it all by feel and the saliva and the water? Is saliva or water is used to soften the peptide? How do you guard for sanitary conditions? Do any people tell you to stop for 20 minutes because they can't take it? There you go.
Yeah, I mean, with regards to these medicines, um, the client is in control, really. So if someone's like, "This is too intense," we can take some. Usually the procedure is 2 to 3 points,
Mhm.
and we can geolocate those on the body to access specific organ channels if there's emotional imbalances, for instance, anger or sadness with the liver, or grief with the lungs,
Right.
or there's, let's say, a cancerous spleen, or a cancerous stomach, or digestive tract, large intestine. We can utilize the traditional Chinese medical system and meridian to access those energy channels and
Right.
to deliver the peptides specifically to those organs. But yeah, if somebody is feeling just uncomfortable, it's just too much, we take the points off, and they immediately, the effects start calming,
Mm.
um, and the person may still purge, but the kind of like rush of energy and um, that's the best way I can describe it. Is it's a rush of energy, because the lymphatic, the vascular, the nervous system, it's kind of like the body's. That's why it falls in the category of hormesis, because it's like a cold plunge, right? You get
Right.
into a cold plunge, and everything is telling you, "Oh my God, what are you doing? You're in a cold
Jump in
plunge."
the freaking
And
cold.
it's very
What
cold.
do you
But
do?
if you can stay there for a short period of time, the body goes into a deep reset, and the health benefits are innumerable, as we can see from like the European standard and stuff. So there's this term hormesis is common amongst the biohack community, because it's a regenerative response in the body. A lot of people feel and look younger from this medicine. A lot of people will report shift in chronic pain. Um, there's some interesting peptides inside of the Kambo cocktail that function very similar to stem cells.
Mm.
So it's very interesting, the response, and we know that stem cells are dormant. So we're still in the research process of looking at how these peptides are creating physiological and biological responses in the body.
Right.
And we think one of the things may be that it's stimulating what we call redox molecules, or signaling molecules to peptides to create repair in the body.
Mm.
Um, Very interesting stuff.
Yeah. So it stresses, turning on genes for, repair, cellular senescence, all that stuff is probably going on as part of this whole process.
It's very interesting. We look and there's areas of stagnation on a vascular level. We talked about the blood is the life force, and if we look at like Carillion photography, we can see cold areas in the body, and these cold areas with vaso restriction don't get the oxygen and the nutrients necessary to function for the mitochondria of the cells and the interstitial tissue of that area. So it makes sense that this medicine, what it was promised, kind of in the mythological aspect of it, that it would open and vasodilate and detox the body, which is why it Kambo is referred to as a situational medicine, and because it's adaptogen,
Right.
again, some of the first things that are needed by the body to manage itself is blood circulation, oxygen circulation, and lymphatic detoxification.
Right. Right. So, like, pre and post prep, whether it be, modalities, foods, herbals. I mean, I have some thoughts about, I think, what would be good, but what do you generally tell people like before they come in for a Kambo session? Encourage your do's
Well,
and don'ts.
yeah, I would
Don't
definitely.
have a cheeseburger ahead of time. I would think probably one of them, right?
Yeah, I mean, in general, it's really good to avoid alcohol for like a week at least. Otherwise, these medicines have a way of reminding you that that wasn't a good choice. Uh, again, these a lot of
Hangover
healing.
2.0 or something for people.
Yeah, a lot of healing with indigenous medicines involve kind of a bit of a spiritual conversation.
Mhm.
Where um, yeah, there's an actual principle in indigenous medicine that these plants, these animals are highly intelligent, and they're intuitively known to us, whether that's generational or what have you. Our evolution involved them, um, forefathers, foremothers, etc. But these medicines have a way of telling us, and I've sat with Kambo hundreds of times, um,
So, yeah.
and I've gotten those same responses like, oh, you're going to stop eating this, or you're going to stop, doing this. And a lot of people will have some of the same experience. So when we talk about how many combo sessions does it take, it's interesting because after a person does combo for the first time, they're like, wow, that was totally different. Uh, I'm not sure if I will do this again, but I'm glad I experienced it.
That's great.
And thank you. And then a couple of days later, they're like, "Wow, I didn't expect it to be. I'm sleeping better. I've totally curbed away from carbs. I'm not smoking. I have no desire for uh, alcohol. And then a couple weeks after that, they're like, I really want to do combo again. I know it sounds crazy, uh, but I'm interested in doing this. So it's interesting, right? We have this kind of love hate relationship
Yeah.
with a direct confrontational process with our growth,
Mhm.
because there tends to be two aspects of ourself. One that's kind of like, we look at those memes, right? That's like what your spiritual self is, and it's like the guy kicking himself off of the cliff, and it's like your ego. So the relationship between what our instincts are saying and then what our weakness is saying, which is an avoidant, comfort based kind of disposition, we find with medicines that are so radical and empowerment and um, physical transformation, that we come at this place of squaring with ourselves, where we're
Right.
like, oh, one side of me really doesn't want to do that, and the other side of me is saying, absolutely, this is the best thing for you. And
Right.
when we confront that aspect and we make it through the process, which is only 20 minutes afterwards, people are like, wow, I'm really glad that I did that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so they build a relationship.
yeah, I was like the same way. I was like, oh, this is okay, this doesn't feel great, when you're doing it, it's just not something you could say, yeah, it was intense, but yeah, afterwards, I maybe had like a slight mild headache for about an hour, maybe a little lymphatic swelling, almost I feel like a sore throat, but that just dissipated, and after that, I was just feeling really good.
Yeah,
So yes, I could see that people were, trying to would come out of it and go, yeah, I don't know if I want to do that. But then again, you could feel what it was. It was like, yeah, okay, well, I could do it again. It's only 20 minutes. Um,
right.
yeah, someone's asking me, what exactly do you feel? What I felt, like Neil's saying, I felt like this, this almost, yeah, like pressure or you know, building up, along in the stomach meridian area or stomach area, so I say,
Mhm.
um, you feel like a warmth in your body. You're feeling like you're getting like a bad flu in some ways. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
that's kind of what it is. And then you start feeling nauseous. And I don't like throwing up, but in some ways you have to throw up because that helps you get the stuff. It's almost like, if you're sick, like, you sometimes when you're sick and you're just like you're in misery and you're just like, I don't want to throw up, but if I just throw up, I know I'll feel better after. And then you
Exactly.
do, and you're like, oh yeah, wow, I feel really much, much better. So I think it's kind of like the same thing. It's like it's taking you through that and taking you through that process. But you
Yeah.
can control it, right? Because like you said, you could take the medicine off.
Yep.
That process then just starts dwindling down. It's not like a flu where you'll keep having it, at least
Right.
from my
Right.
experience.
Yeah, correct. The idea is that basically, from an indigenous belief system, that basically the sickness comes up to be emotionally experienced. And then there's the release of, like, I ask people, what would you like to let go of? And if that was let go of, what would you like to bring into your life? And the two are um, related.
Hmm.
So the ability to release and have something to help facilitate the release is usually what the person needs, and it's like this emotional. People have visions sometimes on Kambo, although it's not it's not a psychoactive medicine at all. It's more of just like an emotional transformation, and yeah, it's a very direct medicine. A lot of Amazonian medicines have this relationship. Like if you just did a dieta with mapacho, which is a tobacco, they just like drink it, and they purge. Sometimes they'll use juiced onions as a purgatory, but this whole purgatory process of going through a dislodging of stuck energy, and emotionally and spiritually, physically, going through that whole releasing within these ceremonies, there's a definite um, turning point,
Mhm.
tipping the scales, if you will, regarding health around the detoxification. And most people from the West that go and study and go to do dietas or study with ayahuasca find that some of the preliminary stages in the balancing of their mind, body, and spiritual, their soul, have to do with letting go of things that have been um, stuck in
Mhm.
the space, for better use of terms,
Right.
right?
So like people who are, you're talking about like, not having alcohol or things like that beforehand. Is there anything else that you would have them do for preparation or, I mean, colonic
Yeah. Yeah,
or
if there's, we say take 72 hours, no depression medications, SSRIs, things like that. We do a bit of a medical intake with you, and talk a bit about, what your goals are, for the session. But for the most part, we just eat clean during the week and hydrate during the day. We want to have 3 to 4 hours prior to the session so that digestion can complete itself. And other than that, if you have any pre-existing conditions or are on any pharmaceutical drugs, that you just let us know so that we can, be aware of it. But yeah, there's not combo is pretty effective, um, regardless, and,
Mhm.
and it's just one of those things where it's just much easier. For instance, there was a gentleman who, you know, uh, was in a life and death battle with heroin.
Mhm.
And he had just done heroin like 48 hours prior, but he thought he was going to die because he felt his next dosage of heroin would kill him. And we did Kambo and shifted the whole pattern, detoxified his body. So it was rough through the process, but compared to death, it was a great, alternative. uh, so we find that kind of like, if you come into the realm working with this peptide therapy, that you're ready to let go of some things that are not serving you, and that can be an emotional thing, it can be a physical thing, or an
Right.
ailment in the body, and a lot of strength. This medicine is known as a hunting medicine.
Mm.
So in the Matse's indigenous practice, they'll do 3 sessions within a moon cycle, and then they go and hunt. And this helps to curb their appetite, because sometimes it can be days to find
Right.
the hunting grounds. And they also will apply this on their dogs. And the medicine just kind of like, it's almost like a ketosis, right?
Mhm.
The crud in the body usually gets stored in the fat layers.
Right.
And in Kambo, because the vasodilation, kind of the crud and the toxicity that is stored is loosed from the body and then purged out of the body. So
Mm.
this increases anaerobic activity of the cells, like oxygen producing mitochondria, which is increasing the gain of strength and vitality and energy, basically.
And so people are going to
It's
lose
very
weight.
interesting medicine.
People then will lose weight on.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go, guys. If you want to lose some weight, you may, just a short
Feel
time,
younger.
feeling so hot, and then, I don't know if Jenny Craig is going to be bringing Campbell to the to their institutions, but you never know.
I mean, sometimes Kambo is a hard sell, to be honest with you, because it's just, it's like a cold plunge. It's like, when is there ever a good time to plunge yourself into 40-degree water? There's always an excuse not to do it. But then
Right.
all of a sudden you do it and you come out, and then testosterone is 3 times, the inflammation is, and the pain is immediately cessated. And then you're just like, wow, the skin firms up, just everything is almost, it's like a miracle. And this medicine functions like that. In a short time, in an intense time, the body uh, transforms, releases toxicity, and within 20 minutes, you're out of that space. And then within an hour, most people are like, wow, that was amazing.
Mm.
And then the next day, and for the next 28 days, you can feel just
Okay.
eyesight increase.
Yeah.
Visual acuity is one of the results of Kambo. Um, Cardiovascular strength and vitality
You find people's
is one
blood
of the
pressure,
results.
blood pressure start normalizing.
Well, I mean, just strength and vitality, as far as stamina
Right. Right.
is concerned.
Good for
Um,
good for athletes. I mean,
Very
that's
good for athletes. Mr. Universe sat with me in Cambo, several MMA fighters, many martial artists, and a lot of them report just radical results, like doubling their max sets,
wow.
just regeneration of damaged tissue and injuries.
Mm.
It's a very, very curious medicine, and it's fast acting, and the results are radical. So
So would they have to do it like, if you want to do it for just whatever? I mean, we were talking before about cancer, but now we have, like, let's say someone is just, uh, you know, anti-aging biohacking type thing, or um, anything else, Lyme. What about mold toxicities? Did people have to do it like 3 times a month every month, or is it like every other month, or is it like a couple times a year? What are people finding?
I mean, we usually kind of start with general feedback. So we'll do 3 sessions,
Right.
and then the person, for sure, within 3 sessions, within 28 days, the person's going to palpably feel the effects of Cambo in their life, in their sleep patterns, in their eating patterns, in their energy patterns, in their emotional patterns. Um, people also experience environmental changes, like for instance, toxic relationships, things
Oh,
that
we're losing you
people
there.
boundaries. When a person steps forward to their empowerment, they face their weakness, then they will shift their environment to a healthier environment. And then usually cancer patients, let's say a stage 4 cancer patient, we usually recommend, usually between 8 and 10 sessions over a
Over 6 months. Okay, over 6 months, like doing it 3 times
yeah.
during the month.
Yeah, and usually those people we also work with, like you do, like a dietary consideration, things that, not only does the medicine detox, and there's something to be said about the addiction of foods, right? For instance, a lot of people don't understand yeast overgrowth, candida overgrowth can influence the psychological aspects
Right.
of our eating habits.
Mhm.
Wanting, like creating an addiction and a craving for sugar to feed the yeast is a parasitic um, occupation of your body. I've
Right.
done Kambo on women that were trying to get pregnant. That was one of my clients from Michigan who flew down to Florida, and she did a series of 3 sessions. And first session, coupled with colonic, she had a 20-foot tapeworm come out. Next one, there was a 30-foot tapeworm. It was
Mhm.
radical. She was purging hookworms. There was flukes that were coming out of her eyes. She literally was infested, and the doctors were like, "You're fine. We can't find anything." And it was quite the alternative to that. So what happens is when the body gets strong and these peptides seem to be what the body is needing to kind of like tip the scales on the internal battle of homeostasis. That
Yeah.
when the body gets that, that we start seeing major gains and results. I mean, for instance, in Lyme, there's more of an epidermal parasite that kind of creates a skin crawling effect, and people can see like things dying and coming out of their skins.
Hmm.
There's some very, very interesting results from the use of Kambo. I would say Kambo can almost transform anything that hasn't been surgically done. And that's a big statement. But after thousands of sessions, from everything to Lyme's to bipolar to just Hashimoto's or Crohn's disease,
Right.
that this medicine has um, transformed people's health issues in a shorter time than anything that I've worked with. I'm a chiropractic doctor and I have a background um, in regenerative medicine. I had a stem cell company for many years, and we studied the effects of peptides and stem cells on the body. And this medicine is unlike any medicine that I've ever seen. I think Vittorio Esperomer, the Italian neuroscientist, really had it right. There's nothing with this spectrum of peptides in
Wow.
nature that we've ever seen in a plant. It's unique in this animal.
Mhm.
Very similar to like the Bufo alvarez toad medicine that Mike Tyson. It's kind of an anomaly in nature.
Mm.
So only these frogs produce this phylomedusan family of frogs
Right.
produce this spectrum of peptides. Um, and it's kind of like frog magic.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of
Wait a
stuff
minute.
going
It's
on that we can't explain why.
I mean, it's kind of amazing because it's I mean, in so many ways, when we think about disease, infections, toxicities, things like that, um, they lower the body's vibration, right? Or if the body is vibrating low because of emotional toxins or situations or quick insults like a like a medicine. It's like everything gets put down at a very low vibration, and then all the other things can exist there. The
That's interesting.
toxins, the parasites, and if this thing rapidly jumps up that your frequency state, it's like I can see why it just all of a sudden you're just like purging this stuff out because it doesn't exist in you. It shouldn't exist there because you're here and that stuff's down here. That makes sense.
Yeah, these medicines are known as vibrational medicines. I mean, in the quantum physics world, right? We know that we are vibration, right? We can kind of like go past the atom layer, and we're like, okay, where is it at? So there's this space of quantification, like regarding this vibration, and we know that density and dense emotions create rigidity in the body, right? Like, kind of, you'll have to pry it from my dead hands. But that's a belief system. This is why the medicine kind of works in a way that um, addresses not only the mind but the body and the spirit, and then that way kind of like letting go of the heaviness that physiologically turns into disease, dis-ease,
Right.
right? So these medicines kind of like vibrate the energy, and if anyone out there has sat with Kambo, within like 7 seconds you're dealing with vibrational medicine, because
Yeah.
it just vibrates everything, and it's inescapable. Whatever's stuck is coming out, and you'll get the emotion um, connected with that. This innate wisdom that the body has, that it just goes, "Oh, that's your father's death. That was trauma, and this is grief in the lung channel." And then it comes out, and then the person feels remarkably better, like some type of miracle. But a lot of Amazonian medicines, I would classify ayahuasca, sananga, which is an eye drop, ibogaine, psilocybin, um, uh, the Bufo alvarez. These are all vibrational medicines, and they're, they're inviting us to change our minds and change our beliefs around the the stuck energy.
Right.
And,
Yeah,
and
I had a question
very
about
interesting.
it because bouncing off of that PTSD trauma. Would it help people with that? Have you seen it help people with that? Because it sounds like it would from at least just the descriptions of this.
Yeah, post traumatic stress disorder is a very interesting thing, because um, we the body goes into a fight or flight state, and typically in post traumatic stress disorder, it goes into a fight state,
Mm.
and then it doesn't downregulate from there. So it just goes, you know, 0 to 60, 0 to 60, and this is a neural pathway and a learned behavior. So Kambo, with my patients that I've worked with post traumatic stress disorder, they kind of go through the battlefield, so to speak, or the war within, and then the purge is like a release, a surrendering, if you will, of what they've been holding on to.
Mhm.
And a lot of them experience, especially post traumatic stress disorders, like weeks of just integration and downregulation, sleeping, coming back into a place of homeostasis and safety emotionally, in their spaces. And I've worked with a lot of families, because of post traumatic stress disorder in a family dynamic can be, um, create hypervigilance amongst a spouse or something like that. That it just can be always walking on eggshells and never knowing, not feeling safe as well, like if your partner is going to snap or something from a loud sound. And the experience that I have had with these groups is like it's just a whole nother person.
Wow.
The sessions.
And is there any conditions that you would basically say, no, you shouldn't be doing Kambo, like any specific kind of conditions that would be contrary?
There are a few. One of the biggest things is making sure that the client isn't pregnant, hasn't had an organ transplant, because a lot of organ transplants have an auto um, immune repressant pharmaceutical. So this is because that the organ is a foreign organ and they're repressing the immune system.
Right.
That's a contraindication. Um, I would say, mental health. If somebody is, borderline personality disorder, or has had a history of schizophrenia, there could be a contraindication there. If a woman's menstruating, they should wait until their moon is completed before doing Kambo. Um, if a person has a pacemaker, um, sometimes that can be a contraindication. Although I did work on a heart doctor who decided he wanted to do it anyways, and it was okay. There is a gray area, and we kind of deal with that on an individual basis.
Right. Right.
Um, for instance, I had a client who was doing chemotherapy and then decided he wanted to stop doing chemotherapy and had 2 weeks to live. And usually we would detox from that for a period. Um, but Kambo also detoxes from that, and he
Right.
decided to go with Kambo because it was a terminal situation,
Right.
and was actually able to pull through.
Wow.
It's effective, amazing on breast cancer, skin cancers, brain cancers, colon cancers, pretty much cancer in the body in general. And this goes along the lines of Dr. Zach Bush, is essentially um, a yeast overgrowth, which creates an acidity in the body, and then also a systemic toxic load of glyphosate, which is creating a intercellular um, disruption.
Mhm.
And then the stem cells actually of the cancer cells actually believe that they're the only cell, so they're reproducing faster than any cell in the body.
Right.
So all this has to do with toxicity. All this has to do with neurological communication. So Kambo addresses all of these things systemically, bringing the body back into balance. So if you're willing to do the Kambo enough, again, fertility, cancer, AIDS, Hashimoto's, Lyme's, all types of digestive issues and imbalances in the body.
Mold toxicity, because I know we get in a lot.
Yeah, mold is, which is a serious situation in Florida, especially.
Yeah.
Mold toxicity, black mold, is very nasty, and it can affect the entire body. And there's very few things that we can do to kind of regain balance.
It's hard
Uh,
to get those toxins out. Obviously, you want to get out of the environment. But what have you seen? Have you seen people being able to clear that quickly with the combo?
yeah, there's a category which is like mold, yeast, bacterial, which all of these feed on sugars, right?
Hmm.
Cancer, this kind of, it's almost like a mutation physiologically in the body, that this foreign material kind of comes in and then wreaks havoc on the blood, on the immune system. It creates an imbalance, and we see a lot of those people who, um, were either had a regimen of antibiotics or steroids at a particular traumatic place in their life, or they had a vaccine. But we can track back to those times where from that point on their health had been compromised, and most of the time those antibiotics, which we know affect the probiotics, the beneficial bacteria, sacks the biome, and then the immune system tanks. And from that place forward, um, they're just operating at a deficiency.
Right.
So Kambo brings a lot of strength, and if we look at it from a biological aspect, it's pretty simple, right? As long as the toxins, the free roaming radicals, are still in the body, and the body doesn't have a way of getting rid of those in a natural way,
Right.
uh, then they're still um, operating on in an from an imbalance, right? So things like aluminum, mercury, things that are difficult to move out of the chelate out of the body. Kambo works amazing with heavy metal toxins and foreign solvents and things that are unfortunately in a lot of allopathic pharmaceutical medicines.
Do that all the time. It's a very so it asks what happens to that terminal patient that you just mentioned, that they decide.
The one with the colon cancer.
I think the one that decided to stop chemo and it was just terminal and they were trying to detox the chemo.
Yeah, yeah. He passed. He passed recently, but he lived a couple years longer
Wow.
than they predicted, and he did several sessions of combo. Um, so it was really interesting. We also had a client with she had kind of systemic cancer. She
Mm.
had it for a very long time, um, and she was supposed to pass and within like a couple weeks, and she lived like a whole another year because she came and did Kambo. A lot of times, though, we find ourselves, and I'm imagining, Dr. Adam, you have the same thing, right? Right? There's a choice people have, right? Do we keep trying to work with allopathic medicine, pharmaceuticals, things that don't have, you know, a bioenergetic signature that operate as kind of like poisons in the body? So a lot of times I get into this relationship of conversing with cancer patients, right? It's like, if you're going to try Cambo, I would recommend taking a break from the chemotherapy because the chemo is really creating a lot of free roaming radical damage in the
Right.
body and is a toxin, is a solvent. And sometimes there's a battle, right? Because they see $1 billion industry, multi-trillion dollar industry, really, and what they consider a lot of science and behind cancer treatment. But
Right.
the ones that have decided, because it's difficult to do both, right? Because you're toxifying on their belief system that this kind of chemotherapy is going to help by eradicating kind of a military approach to the body, and then Cambo, which then detoxifies the body.
Very
And my
opposite.
clients that have um, decided to just go with Cambo for a period of at least 6 weeks, all are in remission.
Wow. That's just amazing. Have any one other question I asked, any extreme adverse reactions that you've had seen or heard about because maybe you haven't seen it yourself, but anything out there?
Um, as far as Cambo is concerned, we'll usually do a test point. I've never met anybody who was had anaphylaxis, like histamine response, and inflammation response. But I've heard stories. Although with the students that I've trained, which are close to 150 practitioners, which I would say 10% of those are doctors working with this medicine. Um, we've not had any adverse effects. The biggest adverse effect is the detoxification
Really,
of,
really.
this is like the heaviness of the muck and the mire of the process and the experience. But after they get through that, they look at the bucket and they're like, "Oh my God, this is gross, and I feel so much better. It's like the irrefutable evidence, right? You just look in the bucket, and it's like candida, and there can be had a gentleman, African American gentleman, that came, and all these hookworms came out of his body,
Oh boy.
and he was just like, oh, wow, that worked. Miracles. So yeah, besides the discomfort, um, uh, there there's a thing called frog sleep, which can be kind of like you can like pass out for about 5 or 10 seconds, in which we usually take the medicine off of you. But this is it's a low blood pressure response, which is why we talk and you intake. Usually, somebody with low blood pressure would do a lot less on them.
Right.
But also,
What about hypertension? Someone with hypertension.
correct, yeah. So also, the patients that have worked in that capacity tend to regulate blood pressure afterwards, but also report that um, there's kind of like this um, angelic place or nirvana or some place of peace or an emotional reset that happens, or some vision that they had, which is very interesting. This is kind of a
That during that frog sleep thing, you mean?
yes, yes, and definitely, I've actually been there. I've had frog sleep myself, and it's a deep reset.
Hmm.
I kind of equate it to the body is kind of going through all this activation process, and the mind's kind of going, "What's happening? What's happening? What's happening?" And the combo goes, "Okay, just take a break." And it's remarkable how quickly the people come back as well, and they're just like, "Wow, how long was I like out for?" And usually we're like, 15 seconds, and they're like, "That felt like I don't even know." Right? They just come back and they're really in a deep state.
Yeah.
Um, and again, mostly people from the addiction community talk about that particular experience as like the deepest reset of their nervous system.
Hmm.
Um, so
But you're having like some people get like swelling in the face and things like that. That
yeah, there's
what's that, a lymphatic, or is it not an anaphylaxis? Because people see swelling, they're like,
we
oh my
call it
God,
frog face.
I'm having anaphylactic, reaction, but it's not.
It's not usually. We have this thing called the Venus return, and if the head gets below the heart, the lim- the lips, the face, um, can experience some swelling. We, funny enough, we do take on these kind of characteristics of a frog during the experience, and we can look aged almost,
Mhm.
um, during this 20-minute period. And then within a couple hours, the lymphatic system that was really stimulated and is responding in that way. And then all of a sudden, people talk about they feel younger, they look younger. Um, you know, I don't sell Kambo as an anti aging,
Right.
you know, but based on, you know, purging 1, 2, 3 gallons of toxicity out of the body,
You're gonna feel better at some point or look better.
you just look better.
Oh,
We
yeah.
see, we see a lot in the eyes,
Mm. Mm.
um, right? Because, and this as as a doctor, you can kind of like see the reflection of the toxicity of the immune system in the eyes, in the heaviness of the person, in the story of the person, and out of every session that I've served, I definitely see some type of energetic lightness and clarity, um, light, if you will, that
Right.
comes more, um, is present with the person more after the sessions. And again, there's that just kind of like common sense, right? You're just like, Yeah, you just purge 3 gallons of toxic material out of your body. Of course, you feel better.
Yeah, exactly. I remember if I we probably think we covered pretty much not everything under the sun, but quite a bit, and everyone should just know that we're open to get Neo up our way, so we can facilitate some combo for you guys or people that you know, if you think that you know anybody that would benefit from it. It sounds like everyone, if they can, decide they want to go in the cold plunge, right? Almost. Um, that, we're going to be figuring that out in time. And, so just stay tuned about that. We'll have a recording of this webinar so you can play it back, share it. And it's an amazing, amazing medicine. I get to say, "Oh yeah, I want to do it again, Neal. I want to do it again." I do. Just think about it. Like we're saying, "Oh, it's got all these great effects." Um, so it prophylactically, it can be a great medicine, even if you're not sick or that you know of, or toxic that you know of. Because if it can help somebody in a dire state of metabolic distress, um, disease, infection, imagine what your body can do always kind of operating at that high level all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot. We're coming in a country where 1 out of 2 people are on depression medications. Pharmaceutical residual chemicals are in our water.
Mhm.
Our foods are irradiated and sprayed with pesticides, and so in general, this is one of the most important medicines in the West for our time.
Yeah.
And I periodically, like every 4 months, treat myself. Even though I've gone through hundreds of combo sessions, it's just one of those things that it's an edge. Really, it gives you an edge. And I I haven't been sick, and I mean I haven't been sick in probably 9 or 10 years.
Wow.
Um,
Even with like a cold or anything, huh?
No, and the beautiful thing about combo too, and this is what I want to invite, some of the people who are on this chat too. It's like you can sit with one point and you don't purge, but you feel the effects. So if I feel anything in my space, like something weakness, a sniffle, I can sit with one point and immediately the results are I'm better. My immune system is up. So
It's just
it's
an immune crank. I mean, so you don't even have to go through the whole process. So if anyone just says, I don't know if I'm ready for that, for the whole detox, they can just
yeah.
do, like, I guess you'd call it almost like an immuno boost combo.
Yeah, it's kind of a microdose of Kambo, which is really amazing. It drops you into a very deep state of meditation. It's very beneficial, and yeah, it's a good way to get your feet wet and check out the medicine. But it is an immediate. That's the great thing about Kambo is because it's for these indigenous people, this is emergency medicine. If they get a snake bite, any of that stuff, they're on the
Wow.
trail. They just, use a
Take our
little bit of
take
this.
take our Cambo and bring it with us, like everywhere, right? Actually, I had this here. I mean, it's actually very portable, right? If you put it, they put it on a like a stick, so it's dried out. So you could
Yeah,
bring it with you anywhere, really.
it's true. I've talked a lot with the indigenous people, and it saves lives. Um, an injury, or they're out, or they get hit by a snake, or they have a laceration, or uh, sepsis or some type of bacteria.
Hmm.
It, it's it's a
So
very
they'll use this, and their body will fight off that infection.
exactly. It's immediate. That's the thing I love about combo. Actually, um, when people approach protocols of pharmaceutical medicine, we're talking about, oh well, come back and after 6 months of antibiotics, and we'll just see if this is working. We'll do this
Right.
test. We'll do that test with Cambo. within 1 to 2 sessions, you're feeling better. And it's an immediate result. I mean, it's like day and night.
I
And
think
it's,
I think the kids could use this too if we could do it in a way, maybe like the 1 points or something. Like you're saying they did
yeah,
with.
1 point.
Why not? Why not?
Absolutely. I've treated five, 6 children. It was all amazing. It's amazing how clean their bodies are. They purge. They felt good, really strong. It's amazing. I went to Peru just recently, and this little kid that was 5 years old, this little Matses kid, he come out. He was almost like a gymnast. His body was really ripped for a 5-year-old. And then he proudly like displayed his combo points on his arm. And one of the Matses chiefs was like, "Yeah, this is my son." And he's like, "Yeah." And kind of like a little macho kid, but really it was astounding to see the physiology, and the practices of this medicine, how strong this and I would say very very present, and well articulated this kid was. He was like an example of vitality.
Right,
Um,
that's the vitality.
very interesting medicine. So yeah, we can do microdosing for people if they want to sit with a point. I'll also bring Hape and Sananga with me, and Sananga is a medicine that comes from an Amazonian milkweed, and it reverses ocular degeneration.
Mm.
So glaucoma, nearsighted, farsighted, um, uh, all types of eye disease
Right.
is reversed with Sananga. And we'll use those medicines. So yeah, an opportunity for
Yeah.
people to get familiar with these medicines, and all of these medicines, like for instance, the Hepe and the Sananga, are not incredibly expensive. So this is something that,
It's
especially with Hepe and the Sananga,
accessible.
yeah, and they can bring it into their practice. I've helped, I don't know, 100 people get off of smoking cigarettes or things that are habits. And one thing about the indigenous medicine is um, like your practice, like holistic medicine, a lot of these things can work in conjunction with other
Right.
natural medicines that
Right.
they're indicated. Um,
Hyperglycemics or true dose or hyperbaric or IVs, it's just anything that's going to bring the body, homeopathics, whatever it might be to bring the body to better vitality. So it's all about that.
absolutely, feeling better, right? It's like it's not just about you know how old we can live to, but the quality of life that we live.
Right.
Um, and so this is a medicine. There's like a gentleman down again in Iquitos. He's 78 years old, and he treats Kambo once a month. And the guy's spry and very vital. So the process of detoxifying the body is what creates vitality and allows the organ systems to kind of like go through their back flush system and kind of get back to the origins of their strength or their homeostasis, if you will. So these medicines are very interesting for that.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I think everyone's going to watch on the recordings. The people who are here, thank you very much because I think you learned a lot. It's definitely new. It's definitely different, at least for our area. It's an old medicine, but
Yeah.
I think it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Adams.
Thank you. Take care, guys. Bye bye.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.